all the stories I've heard, yours had the most lie in it. Judges, I beg your pardon. Something happened on Friday before you start the timer. Before I start up here, I got a letter on Friday from the Kraft Foods International people, and I'm going to submit this to evidence mainly because I've always wanted to say that.
Kraft?
Yeah.
Is it a cheesy letter?
Oh, no, it's not. It's I like you already. No, it's a cease and desist letter until the lawsuit is settled. They sent this to me. They told me I'm not supposed to tell this story until the litigation is final. But I always believe, the truth will out, and so I'm going to tell the story, even though I don't know some of you, and they said they'd send somebody to listen. But I'm going to tell the story anyway. The other thing they said was I can't even mention the name of the product in question in the lawsuit. They're dangerous, volatile, and possibly lethal product. I can't even mention this. Okay? But I have lawyers in my family also, my sister, and she said it would probably be okay if I don't say it. Just because I'm prohibited doesn't mean you're prohibited, right? So what we're going to do is, when I'm supposed to say this word, when it comes up in the story, so there aren't these big awkward pauses, I'm just going to give you a really subtle gesture, something you'd have to watch for, right? Because in the recording, I don't want it obvious that I'm cueing you. So I'm going to give you a really subtle little gesture to cue you, okay? It's just going to be easy. It's going to go like this. Okay? So when I do, you say...
Jello.
Good, let's practice. Ready? We'll be casual for a moment.
Jello.
Good, a little faster.
Jello.
Good, that's better. You're very good at this. You've been practicing this week. All right, here we go. And?
Jello.
Perfect. Thank you. Good. I don't see any Kraft t-shirts or anything on, so I think I'm safe. Okay. I have had some strange jobs in my life. It is really true. I was the guy who volunteered, was paid to rappel down the face of Mount Rushmore so I could clip the shrubbery from the noses and ears of the presidents. I went from office to office selling knee pads to proctologists as they went from orifice to orifice. I even transported genius mice by truck from California to St. Louis, but it's a different story. But I never felt like my life was in danger. I never felt really lethally threatened until I worked at Kraft Foods shipping Jello. That's right. It was dangerous. Let me tell you about it. I worked a red-eye shift with a skeleton crew, and I was the guy in charge of the forklift, and I took huge fiber barrels, 77-gallon barrels of Jello that were stacked high up in the warehouse, and I brought those big barrels of Jello back down to the bay for shipping the next day. That's what I did. You would think that would be an easy thing to do, but that stuff, I swear, it almost killed me. It almost did. And it's a pathetic epitaph. He was killed by Jello. It's not manly at all. Not at all. So, but wait till I tell you. See, it was kind of a lonely job, kind of a tricky job, because I had moved those big things down to the floor. And really, there was only me working in the bay, and my only company was a man named Angus. He would come by and chat. He was the custodian. He'd come by and chat all the time, kind of check up on me, and he could chat, man. That guy could chat like nobody else I knew. He was a grizzled old Scot, was Angus. First generation American, straight down from the Highlands. He had a brogue thick as porridge. He had these big eyebrows and this big bushy beard, like a rhododendron bush, this big thing. And he would stop by, and one thing also, down deep in his Kraft coveralls, he would keep down snug and snuggled in there, and probably against company policy, he would keep a pet. He would keep his stoat, William Wallace, down inside, down in his coveralls. And first time I met him, he took William Wallace out and showed me, and I said, "Oh, that's a lovely weasel." And he took those two eyebrows and he furrowed them down into one, because I was wrong. It's not a weasel. It's a stoat. He said, "It's a stoat?" I said, Okay, but Angus, isn't it kind of the same thing? I mean, weasel and stoat, aren't they sort of the same? And he looked at me like I was an Englishman that had just arrived in his village with a real estate sign, and he said, no, listen, if you can't tell the difference between a weasel and a stoat, and one day you need a stoat and all you've got was a weasel, that's the day you'll wish your weasel was a stoat. And I wasn't really sure what he meant, because I wasn't entirely sure what he said. But it turns out he was right. He was right. Well, let me tell you, those shifts were really kind of lonely. And the best part of the night was about 3:10 when we took our lunch. And he'd come by and fetch me, and we'd go to the commissary. It was dark except for our table. And I'd have my regular bag lunch. It was a sandwich and a soda and a little bag of chips. And he brought out his tartan plaid lunchbox. And he'd open it up. And he always had a pickle or pickle relish and bologna hoagie sandwich. And then he'd have a carrot, just peeled, a single carrot. And then he'd have 2 little snack packs of
Jello.
And then a little blue cupcake. And the little blue cupcake wasn't any blue cupcake, it was a Scottish flag cupcake. It had thick blue icing on it and a stripe of white lines, thin white stripes, so it looked like a little Scottish flag. And as we sat there, I told you he could talk. As we sat there and he was eating his hoagie, he'd be, telling me all these Scottish poems and these stories about him as a boy living up in the mountains and the highlands, he'd be eating my heart is in the highlands. My heart it is not here. My heart is in the highlands, chasing the deer. And he'd go on and on and on, tell me all this stuff, and all the time he'd be eating his carrot and telling me more and feeding little bits to William Wallace as he went. But all that got serious. Deadly serious once he got to his 2 cups of Jello. He loved it. Told me, I crave it. I crave it every day. I love it. I love it. And I said, that's amazing. He goes, I love it. Always have. He said, always will. And he took out from that box a little spoon that he had fashioned as a boy from the antlers of a red deer buck. And once he got to those little 2 packs of Jello, he didn't say a word, just plowing right through. And then we went back to work. I never did see him eat the cupcake. I must have saved that for later. But he loved the Jello. And he craved the Jello. Anytime he saw, Jello. He ate the Jello. Until there was no more. Jello. And that's the way he lived. And it's a good thing too, because that's what saved my life. And let me tell you why. It was about 2:30 one night. And it's late, and I was kind of fuzzy-headed, and those big stacks of barrels go way up toward the ceiling, all the way up to where the fire suppression stuff is, the sprinklers and everything. And to get the forks to go up to that height and just fit within the pallets, it takes a lot of spatial kind of understanding, and I made a mistake. You ever make a mistake? Yeah. I did. You haven't? That's your first mistake. I made a mistake, and I lifted up a little too high. When I went forward, one of the forks of the forklift went right into the fiber side of one of these barrels. And I looked just to see what the damage was, and sure enough, there was green dust coming. And you have to understand, what was inside these barrels was not just any old gelatin. Almost kind of, not just that. It was super instant, hyper quick set lightning Jello. Powder, exactly what it was. And I know it was true because as it came down, I kind of went, like that, and some of it dropped in my mouth like snowflakes, and instant, I'm not kidding, as soon as it hit my tongue, it was like set, it was like a thin film of the Jello on my tongue. It was amazing, and I got a little bit of the Jello in my eye, and for a second, before I blinked it away, it was green. I was seeing green. It was that instant. I was amazed, but I had a job to do, and the tricky part was now I had to get the fork out of the barrels, And it should have been easy. I should have just been able to go like that back, but what's ever easy? I pulled back, and as I did, I pulled the fork out, but sure enough, I pulled those barrels with it, and it came teetering. And after teetering, it came toppling. And soon, 14 barrels fell on top of 54 more right in the middle of this big warehouse space. And they came crashing down one onto the other, popping and pluming, exploding, and making the whole room filled with this really dense, fine powder, the color of Kermit. And it was just, I couldn't see and I couldn't breathe. And as I was watching, right in front of me, these barrels are sealed with that spring-loaded steel band. And one of them went, spang, and came off, and I saw it go It went cutting right through all that fog. And it went up, up, up. And as it went up, I saw it hit one of the sprinkler heads with a spang. And it broke that little red capsule. Never break the little red capsule in a sprinkler. Because what happened right after that, I knew what was going to happen. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen then the way you know when your cat or dog gets on the floor and goes, I knew it. It was the same panic that I had. And I leaped out of the forklift cab to get out anywhere toward the door where the green fog wasn't. But it was too late. The deluge of water from the sprinkler system hit that emerald fog that was hovering and filling the entire space. And in a split second, I was frozen. Frozen and suspended above the floor in all of this green, the color of a leprechaun's elbow. And I couldn't move. And it was all that was in my ears and my nose, and the Jello was in my soul. And was in my eyes, but I couldn't see, and it was in my mouth, which wasn't actually all that bad, right? But I couldn't breathe. I had used up all the space in my mouth, and I couldn't breathe at anything, and I was sure I was going to die. I was sure right there I was going to totally die, and they'd find me in a few hours, this dead, big marshmallow in a uniform, just kind of frozen there in a lethal salad. I was just like that. And as I was beginning to give up hope, and the heart was thumping in my brain and everything, just I was running out of air, I saw it. Through this green, wobbly lens, I saw it through that open door where the wasn't. I saw it. There he was. Angus stood outside the door, aghast. His jaw was open. He couldn't believe in front of him at the door was this shimmering green wall. And I heard him curse. Just like he was right next to me, because you know that sound travels through, just like it does through water. And I heard him curse, and then he broke out of his reverie, and he snapped open that lunchbox he had in his hand. He plunged his hand down the lunchbox, and he brought out the cupcake. And he took his thumb, and he swiped off that blue icing from the cupcake, and he dropped the cupcake. With his other hand, he reached down and pulled out William Wallace, the steward. And he spoke to him with charged words. He said, "All right, William, today's the day. It's now, as we've trained." And he took that icing and he painted half the Stoat's face with this blue icing. True William Wallace he. And he said, "Go now, boy. Go and give him his freedom." And he held that Stoat up to that green shimmering wall, and the Stoat gave this squeak of defiance to death, like that. Anyway, he started he started burrowing straight to me. I could see him, and I still couldn't breathe, but I could see him, and he was coming closer and closer, like a little furry Scottish buzzsaw, making this tiny, tiny little. And he finally got to me. He got to me, and as he touched my lip, all in the tunnel fell away, and I had the sweetest breath of air, literally, because it smelled like buttercream and Stoat. And it just rushed into me, and it filled my lungs, and I swear that he winked at me. And I really think that Angus was right. I don't think a weasel could have done it. I think it had to have been a Stoat. And then he started going straight up, so he can make a respiration chimney for me. And I could breathe again, but I was still stuck. And I was terrified. You know that terror that you have when you're in that dream when you can't move? It was just like that. I was still like this. And I looked again, and I could see him. There he was. Angus outside the door, antler spoon in hand. And he said, "Hey, no, it's my turn." And he started in. All the way to me. He tunneled his way through to me, and it was an amazing thing. And he grabbed my hand, this big Scottish Highlander hand, grabbed my hand, and he pulled with an amazing pull, and he exhumed me out of my gelatinous grave just in time. As we got out of that tunnel, it all collapsed upon itself, with 1,000, the impact sound of 1,000 lime squids, just. And he laid there, and I lay there. My heart was thumping. I was gasping for breath. And William Wallace came down green and sticky, and he sat right on top of Angus's dessert distended stomach. And he sat there, and I said, "Oh, Angus, thank you so much. You saved my life. I gotta know, how did you eat that much?" And he gave this big green belch.
and he lolled his head over to me on the floor, and he said, "Ah, lad, do you not know? There's always room for Jello."